The warning sirens screamed across Earth's orbital defense stations as something massive tore through the outer edge of the solar system. Lieutenant Davis rushed to his scanner console while emergency lights bathed the command center in red. His hands shook as he read the impossible numbers scrolling across his screen. 300 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter. Each vessel stretched over 2 miles long and bristled with weapon arrays that made Earth's most advanced battleships look like toys. The alien fleet moved in perfect formation, like a school of metallic predators hunting through the void of space. Admiral Thompson burst through the command center doors, still pulling on his uniform jacket. He had been pulled from his bed at 0300 hours when the deep space sensors first detected the incoming threat. His weathered face showed no fear as he surveyed the tactical displays showing red contacts spreading across the solar system like a plague. "Get me a full tactical analysis now," Thompson barked at his staff. "I want to know everything about those ships within the next 5 minutes." The alien fleet continued its steady advance toward the inner planets. Their ships looked nothing like human designs with twisted organic curves and surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange energy readings pulsed from their hulls in patterns that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Communications Officer Blake suddenly straightened at her station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead ship. It's coming through on all frequencies, and somehow they're speaking perfect English." The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that would haunt humanity's nightmares for generations to come. The alien stood over 8 feet tall with 4 muscular arms ending in clawed hands. Its head resembled a cross between a mantis and a shark, with rows of razor-sharp teeth visible behind its mandibles. Most terrifying of all were its 6 eyes, which glowed with cold intelligence and barely contained violence. "Humans of the 3rd planet," the creature spoke with a voice like grinding metal. "I am War Chief Brutex of the Corthony Death Fleet. Your pathetic species has been marked for extermination by the High Council of our Empire. We have traveled across the galaxy to deliver your judgment, Admiral." Thompson stepped forward and gestured for Blake to open a return channel. He had commanded Earth's defense forces for 20 years and faced down pirates, rebels, and hostile alien traitors. But nothing had prepared him for this moment when humanity's survival hung in the balance. "This is Admiral Thompson of the Terran Defense Force. State your business in our system or leave immediately. You are not welcome here." Brutex's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Behind him, other Corthony warriors moved through the ship's bridge. All of them carried weapons that looked capable of tearing through tank armor with ease. Their red eyes burned with the hunger for battle that had driven their species to conquer 17 star systems in the past century. "Your courage is noted, human, but your situation is hopeless," Brutex continued. "The Corthony Empire has crushed civilizations far more advanced than your primitive world. We have weapons that can crack planets in half and shields that can withstand the heat of dying stars. Your entire fleet consists of 40 ships, perhaps 50. The alien was not wrong. Earth's space navy had been built to handle pirates and asteroid miners, not an invasion force from a galactic empire. Humanity's most advanced ships used fusion drives and plasma weapons, while these aliens clearly possessed technology centuries ahead of anything humans had developed. We offer you one chance to save some of your kind, Brutex said, while examining his claws with casual indifference. Surrender unconditionally within 72 hours, and we will allow 10% of your population to live as slaves in our mining colonies. Refuse and we will sterilize every world in your system and leave nothing but radioactive ash. Admiral Thompson felt the eyes of his entire command staff upon him. These men and women had families on Earth. They knew as well as he did that their 40 ships could not hope to defeat 300 alien warships equipped with superior technology. Any sane military commander would begin negotiating terms of surrender to save as many lives as possible. Instead, Thompson smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. War Chief Brutex, let me explain something about humanity that your intelligence gathering seems to have missed, Thompson said in a voice that carried to every corner of the command center. We don't surrender. We don't negotiate with invaders. who threaten our children. And we certainly don't bow down to alien bullies who think they can waltz into our system and make demands. The alien's 6 eyes narrowed dangerously. Several of his bridge crew growled low in their throats and reached for their weapons. Brutex raised one hand to calm them while keeping his gaze fixed on the human admiral. Your defiance will be remembered when we build monuments from the bones of your dead, Brutex snarled. In 72 hours, my fleet will begin the systematic destruction of every human world, starting with your pathetic homeworld. Use that time to make peace with whatever gods you worship, because the Korthani show no mercy to those who defy us. The transmission cut, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Several junior officers stared at Admiral Thompson as if he had lost his mind. They had just declared war on an empire that had wiped out entire species without breaking a sweat. Earth's population of 12 billion souls now faced extinction, because their military commander had chosen pride over pragmatism. Thompson turned to his communications officer with that same cold smile still on his face. Blake, send a priority transmission to all fleet commanders and planetary defense networks. Use authentication code Omega 77. Blake's fingers hesitated over her console. Omega 77 was the code that authorized humanity's most classified military project. A project so secret that only a handful of people in the entire solar system knew it existed. A project that had consumed massive resources and the best scientific minds Earth could produce for the past 15 years. Sir, are you certain about this? Blake asked quietly. Once we send that code, there's no taking it back, Admiral Thompson looked out at the tactical display showing the alien fleet spreading through his solar system like a cancer. Humanity had always been the underdog in every fight they had ever faced. They had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. Today would be no different, except the stakes were higher than they had ever been before. Send the code, Lieutenant Thompson ordered. It's time these aliens learned what happens when you threaten a human's family. Deep beneath the frozen surface of Europa, humanity's greatest secret hummed with deadly purpose. Dr. Kate Wilson pressed her palm against the bioscanner and waited as massive blast doors slid open with a sound like thunder. Beyond lay a chamber carved from solid rock that stretched deeper than the eye could see. The Prometheus facility had been under construction for 15 years, using mining robots and automated systems to hollow out a space large enough to house a small city. Nobody questioned the official story about ice mining operations on Jupiter's moon. The real purpose of this place was known only to the highest levels of Earth's government and military. All stations report ready for initialization, called out Dr. Martinez from his position at the central control console. Around the chamber, dozens of the brightest scientists humanity had ever produced worked at terminals connected to the most advanced quantum computers ever built. Their faces showed a mixture of excitement and terror as they prepared to activate humanity's ultimate weapon. Kate looked up at the massive structure that dominated the center of the chamber. The device rose over 200 feet into the air and resembled a twisted sculpture made from exotic metals that seemed to bend light around their surfaces. Streams of energy danced between the various components while displays showed power. Readings that would have been impossible just a decade ago. Dr. Wilson were receiving the Omega 77 authorization from Earth Command, reported her assistant Dr. Park from his communication station. Admiral Thompson has given us full authorization to proceed with Operation Prometheus. Kate felt her heart skip a beat. For 15 years they had worked on this project, knowing that someday humanity might need the weapon they were building. That someday had arrived sooner than anyone had hoped when the Korthani invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace with their ultimatum of slavery or death. Begin the startup sequence, Kate ordered. All departments confirm your readings and prepare for full activation. The chamber filled with a low humming sound as the device began drawing power from the fusion reactors, buried even deeper beneath Europa's surface. The exotic matter containment fields flickered to life while gravitational sensors placed throughout the solar system began detecting the first signs of what humanity was about to unleash. On Mars, similar facilities were coming online as Project Prometheus revealed its true scope. The mining colonies on Ceres and Vesta were actually weapons platforms disguised as industrial operations. The research station orbiting Saturn was really a control center for the most devastating weapon system ever conceived by human minds. Dr. Wilson, the gravitational field generators are showing stable readings, Martinez reported. All 47 installations across the solar system are synchronized and ready for deployment. Kate walked over to a secondary console and pulled up the tactical display showing the Corthony fleet still advancing on the inner planets. The aliens had no idea what was waiting for them. Their sensors were advanced enough to detect human ships and energy weapons, but the technology humanity was about to deploy operated on principles that most species never discovered. "What's our projected effectiveness against their fleet?" Kate asked her weapons specialist. Dr. Cohen, who had spent the last decade calculating how to kill things that had never been killed before. Cohen pulled up holographic displays showing computer simulations of alien ship designs based on long-range sensor data. The Corthony vessels were heavily armored and equipped with energy shields that could deflect most conventional weapons. Their hulls were made from advanced alloys that could withstand direct hits from nuclear warheads without serious damage. According to our models, their defenses are designed to counter energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, and even antimatter warheads, Cohen explained. But they can't defend against what we're throwing at them because they don't have anything in their experience to compare it to. The Prometheus weapon system didn't fire energy beams or launch missiles. Instead, it manipulated the fundamental forces that held reality together. The devices scattered throughout the solar system were gravitational field generators capable of creating artificial singularities that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. "Dr. Wilson, we're detecting movement from the alien fleet," called out the sensor operator. "They're beginning their approach to Earth. Estimated time to weapons. Range is 6 hours." Kate nodded and turned to address the entire facility over the intercom system. Every person in the chamber had volunteered for this assignment, knowing they might not survive what they were about to unleash. The gravitational weapons were so powerful that even their creators weren't entirely certain what the long-term effects might be. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we make history," Kate announced. 15 years ago, the Global Defense Council asked us to build a weapon that could protect humanity from any threat, no matter how advanced. Today, we find out if we succeeded. The alien fleet continued its steady advance toward Earth completely unaware that they were flying into the most sophisticated trap ever constructed. War Chief Brutex stood on his bridge watching human ships flee before his superior firepower. The few vessels that tried to stand and fight were quickly destroyed by weapons that could melt through their hulls like butter. "The humans are even weaker than our intelligence report suggested," Brutex commented to his tactical officer. "Their weapons cannot even penetrate our basic shielding systems. This will be over before the day cycle ends." Meanwhile, on Europa, the final preparations were complete. Every gravitational field generator in the solar system was charged and ready to fire. The targeting computers had locked onto every Corthony ship and calculated the precise field intensities needed to overcome their defenses. "All stations report full readiness," Martinez announced. "We have a firing solution on the entire enemy fleet." Kate looked around the chamber one last time. These people had dedicated their lives to building humanity's shield against the darkness between the stars. Now it was time to see if their sacrifice had been worth it. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kate said quietly, "you have permission to fire." The universe held its breath for a moment before humanity showed the galaxy what true terror looked like. Across the solar system, 47 gravitational field generators activated simultaneously, sending waves of twisted space-time racing toward their targets at the speed of light. The Corthony had brought war to humanity's doorstep. They were about to learn that humans had spent 15 years preparing something far worse than war. They had built Annihilation itself and aimed it at anyone foolish enough to threaten their children. War. Chief Brutex was still gloating about human weakness when reality began coming apart around his fleet. The first sign was his tactical displays showing impossible readings as space itself started to behave in ways that violated every law of physics the Korthani understood. "What is happening to our sensors?" Brutex demanded as his bridge crew scrambled to understand readings that should not have been possible. They had no way of knowing that humanity had just introduced them to weapons that attacked the very fabric of existence itself. The Korthani had never experienced true fear until the moment space began to scream around them. Tactical Officer Grimex stared at his console displays, showing readings that defied everything his species knew about physics. The humans had somehow weaponized gravity itself and turned the empty void between planets into a killing field beyond imagination. "War Chief, the gravitational distortions are increasing exponentially," Grimex reported with panic creeping into his voice. "Our sensors cannot track the source of these anomalies, but they appear to be artificial in nature." Brutex watched in growing horror as the first wave of gravitational disturbances reached his outer scout ships. The vessels simply ceased to exist, without warning or explosion. One moment they were sending routine status reports, and the next moment there was nothing but empty space where they had been flying. "All ships maintain formation and increase shield power to maximum," Brutex ordered. "The humans must be using some kind of new weapon technology, but our defenses have withstood far worse than anything these primitives could devise." His confidence lasted exactly 47 seconds. That was how long it took for the gravitational waves to reach the main body of his fleet and demonstrate that Korthani shields were useless against weapons that attacked the fundamental structure of matter itself. The heavy cruiser Death's Edge was the first major vessel to encounter humanity's fury. The ship's advanced energy shields flared and sparked as they tried to deflect forces that existed outside normal physics. For a brief moment, it seemed like the Korthani defenses might actually hold against whatever the humans were throwing at them. Then the gravitational field reached critical intensity and the cruiser began coming apart at the molecular level. The hull plating that had withstood direct hits from antimatter warheads simply dissolved into component atoms that scattered across space like glittering dust. The crew never had time to scream before they were reduced to their basic elements and absorbed into the expanding field of destruction. "Impossible," Brutex whispered as he watched 6 more ships vanish in the span of 30 seconds. "No weapon can penetrate our armor like that. Our hulls are made from neutronium mesh reinforced with quantum-bonded crystalline matrices." Dr. Kate Wilson monitored the battle from her command center deep beneath Europa's ice while gravitational sensors tracked every enemy vessel in the solar system. The alien ships were trying various evasive maneuvers and defensive configurations, but nothing could protect them from weapons that operated by rewriting the laws of physics in localized areas of space. "Target the command ship next," Kate ordered her weapons team. "Let's see how confident their leader remains when he realizes his flagship is just as vulnerable as the rest." The gravitational generators focused their output on War Chief Brutex's massive dreadnought. The alien commander felt his ship shudder as invisible forces began tearing at its hull in ways that Korthani engineering had never anticipated. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the vessel while damage control teams tried desperately to understand what was happening to their supposedly invincible warship. "War Chief, our hull integrity is dropping rapidly," reported Chief Engineer Vorthok. "The damage patterns make no sense. It's as if the very atoms that make up our armor are forgetting how to hold together." That was actually a remarkably accurate description of what humanity's weapons were doing. The gravitational field generators created localized regions where the strong nuclear force that held atomic nuclei together was temporarily disrupted. Any matter caught in these fields simply came apart at the subatomic level, releasing enormous amounts of energy in the process. Brutex grabbed his communications officer and shook the smaller alien violently. "Send a distress call to the home fleet immediately," he snarled. "Tell them the humans have weapons unlike anything in our databases. We need immediate reinforcement by the entire 3rd Battle Group. War Chief, our communication arrays are being disrupted by the gravitational distortions," the officer replied. "I cannot establish contact with our forces outside this system." Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Thompson watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction as alien ship after alien ship simply vanished from his screens. The Korthani had come expecting to face a primitive species armed with chemical rockets and nuclear warheads. Instead, they had encountered a civilization that had learned to harness the fundamental forces of the universe itself. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surviving enemy ships," reported Communications Officer Blake. "They're requesting immediate ceasefire and wish to discuss terms." Thompson's expression never changed as he studied the tactical display. Of the 300 ships that had entered his solar system, less than 50 remained intact. The gravitational weapons had torn through the alien fleet like a chainsaw, through tissue paper, leaving only scattered survivors trying desperately to escape the killing fields. "Patch me through to their commander," Thompson ordered. "It's time." We had another conversation with War Chief Brutex. The main screen showed the alien leader's bridge, which was now filled with smoke and emergency lighting. Brutex himself appeared to have been injured, with green blood seeping from cuts on his face and arms. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by something the Korthani had rarely experienced in their long history of conquest. "Human Admiral Brutex began in a voice that shook with barely controlled terror. "We appear to have underestimated your species' capabilities. Perhaps we can reach some form of accommodation that benefits both our peoples." Thompson leaned back in his command chair and smiled that same cold smile he had worn during their first conversation. Behind him, the gravitational weapons continued their deadly work as more alien ships dissolved into their component atoms. The Korthani were learning what happened when you threatened humanity's children. "War Chief, let me make something very clear," Thompson said. "Your empire made a critical error when you entered our system and demanded our surrender. You assumed we were the same type of species you had conquered before, civilizations that would negotiate when faced with superior firepower." More Korthani ships vanished from the tactical display as the gravitational fields expanded their area of effect. The remaining aliens were trapped in a shrinking pocket of normal space surrounded by zones, where the laws of physics had been temporarily rewritten by human ingenuity and determination. "But humans don't work that way," Thompson continued. "When someone threatens our families, we don't surrender or negotiate. We innovate, we adapt. We find new ways to kill things that have never been killed before. And then we perfect those methods until nothing in the universe can stand against us." Brutex tried to respond, but his words were cut off as another gravitational wave tore through his ship's secondary hull. The alien's 6 eyes went wide with terror as he realized that his species had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The humans weren't just defending themselves anymore. They were demonstrating what true annihilation looked like. "Your 72-hour ultimatum is hereby rejected," Thompson announced. "Instead, I'm giving you a new deadline, War Chief. You have exactly 1 hour to remove every Korthani ship from our solar system. Any vessel that remains after that time will be reduced to its component atoms and scattered across interstellar space." The transmission ended, leaving Brutex staring at a blank screen while his mighty invasion fleet continued dying around him. The Korthani Empire had never retreated from any battlefield in their 3-century history. Today would mark the first time they experienced the taste of absolute defeat at the hands of a species they had dismissed as harmless primitives. War Chief Brutex had conquered 17 star systems and personally overseen the extinction of 4 separate species during his rise through the Korthani military hierarchy. He had witnessed the glassing of entire worlds and commanded fleets that could reduce planets to lifeless rocks with their combined firepower. Nothing in his 3 centuries of warfare had prepared him for the absolute terror he felt while watching his ships dissolve into fundamental particles. "All remaining vessels fall back to the edge of the system immediately," Brutex transmitted to his surviving commanders. "Maintain maximum distance from the gravitational anomalies and prepare for emergency. Jump to hyperspace." The retreat was chaos. Korthani ships that had never fled from any battle found themselves running from an enemy they could not see or understand. Their sophisticated sensors showed nothing but empty space where the human fleet should have been, yet death continued To reach out and claim vessel after vessel with mechanical precision, Commander Thex of the battleship Bone Crusher tried to follow his war chief's orders but found his ship trapped in a pocket of distorted spacetime that prevented faster than light travel. His engineering teams reported that the gravitational fields surrounding them were somehow interfering with their hyperspace generators in ways that Corthony science could not explain. "War Chief, this is Thex," he transmitted with panic obvious in his voice. "We cannot jump to hyperspace. Something is preventing our engines from forming a stable wormhole. The humans have trapped us here." Similar reports flooded in from across what remained of the invasion fleet. Humanity had not only developed weapons that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level, but had learned to use them as cages that prevented enemy ships from escaping the killing field. The Corthony were experiencing their first taste of being hunted rather than being the hunters. Dr. Kate Wilson monitored the alien communications from her command center and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The gravitational field generators were performing exactly as designed. Not only could they unmake enemy ships at the molecular level, but they could also create pockets of twisted spacetime that trapped anything caught within their influence. "Dr. Wilson, we're detecting hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system," reported her sensor operator Dr. Garcia. "Multiple large contacts are dropping out of faster than light travel approximately 12 light hours from Earth." Kate's satisfaction vanished as new readings flooded her displays. The fresh contacts numbered in the thousands and appeared to be even larger than the ships they had just finished destroying. The Corthony Empire was sending reinforcements, and this time they were not taking any chances with humanity's defenses. "Get me a priority channel to Admiral Thompson," Kate ordered. "He needs to know what we're facing." The communication link established within seconds showing Thompson's command center, where staff officers were still celebrating their victory over the initial invasion force. The Admiral's expression grew serious as Kate briefed him on the new threat approaching their solar system. "How many ships are we talking about?" Dr. Thompson asked while studying the sensor data streaming across his displays. "Our long-range sensors are detecting over 2,000 contacts," Admiral Kate replied. "They appear to be arranged in standard Corthony battle formations, which means we're looking at their entire home fleet. Every major warship their empire possesses is heading straight for us." Thompson felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a lead blanket. Humanity had just demonstrated that they could defeat a Corthony invasion force through superior technology and careful preparation. But 2,000 ships represented the accumulated military might of an empire that spanned dozens of star systems. Even their gravitational weapons would be hard-pressed to handle that kind of overwhelming numerical superiority. "What's our operational status on the Prometheus weapons?" Thompson inquired. Kate consulted her technical displays before responding. "All 47 generator sites are fully operational, but we've been running them at maximum output for the past 6 hours. The exotic matter containment fields are starting to show stress fractures in several installations. Are reporting power fluctuations. The gravitational weapons that had seemed so invincible just hours ago suddenly appeared fragile. When faced with the prospect of engaging thousands of enemy ships, the technology was still experimental, and pushing it beyond its design limits could result in catastrophic failures that would leave Earth defenseless." Meanwhile, the survivors of Brutex's original fleet huddled together in the one small region of normal space that remained accessible to them. The war chief studied tactical displays showing the approaching home fleet while trying to formulate a plan that could salvage something from this disaster. "Fleet Marshal Corax will want a full report on what happened here," Brutex muttered to his tactical officer. "How do I explain that we lost over 200 ships to weapons that don't appear on any scanner?" The answer came sooner than expected when Fleet Marshal Corax himself appeared on the communication screen. The supreme commander of all Corthony military forces was an ancient warrior whose scarred face spoke of countless battles fought across the galaxy. His forearms were crossed in a gesture of barely controlled rage as he surveyed the wreckage of what had once been his most elite invasion force. War Chief Brutex Corax spoke in a voice like grinding stone. Explain to me how a primitive species with barely 50 ships managed to destroy the third battle group. Brutex struggled to find words that could convey the horror of what humanity had unleashed. How could he describe weapons that attacked the fundamental structure of reality itself? How could he explain that the humans had somehow learned to weaponize gravity and use it to tear apart matter at the atomic level? Fleet Marshal, the humans possess technology unlike anything in our databases, Brutex finally managed. They have weapons that can unmake our ships at the molecular level. Our armor and shields provide no protection against forces that operate outside normal physics. Corex's 6 eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you telling me that these humans have developed weapons more advanced than our own? I'm telling you that they have developed weapons beyond our understanding, Brutex replied. Whatever they are using, it does not register on our sensors until the moment it begins tearing our ships apart. By then, it is too late to mount any defense. The Fleet Marshal studied the tactical data that had been transmitted from the battle zone. The loss patterns made no sense according to Corthany military doctrine. Ships that should have been able to withstand direct hits from antimatter warheads had simply vanished without trace or debris field. No matter, Corex declared after reviewing the sensor logs. I am bringing the full might of the Empire to bear on this system. 2,000 ships against whatever trick weapons these humans have developed. We will overwhelm them through sheer numerical superiority and then glass every world they have ever touched. But even as he spoke those words, Corex felt a cold certainty settling in his stomach. The humans had already demonstrated that they possessed technology his empire could not comprehend. If they could destroy 200 ships with such ease, what might they be capable of when pressed to their absolute limits? On Earth, Admiral Thompson made his decision. The approaching Corthany fleet represented an existential threat to human civilization. There could be no half measures or attempts at negotiation. Humanity would either survive this encounter or cease to exist entirely. Dr. Wilson Thompson transmitted to the Prometheus facility. I am authorizing activation of all secondary weapon systems. Deploy everything we have and show these aliens what happens when they threaten our species. Kate felt her blood turn to ice as she realized what the Admiral was ordering. The secondary systems were even more experimental than the gravitational generators. They had been designed as a last resort option when facing extinction-level threats. No one was entirely certain what would happen when they were activated. Sir, the cascade generators have never been tested at full power, Kate warned. The theoretical models suggest they could cause permanent damage to space-time itself. Thompson's response was immediate and final. Doctor, if we lose this battle, there won't be anyone left to worry about damaged space-time. Activate everything and make sure the galaxy remembers what humanity is capable of when we're pushed too far. Fleet Marshal Corex commanded the largest military force in Corthany history as his 2,000 ships approached the human solar system with weapons primed and shields at maximum power. Every vessel in his armada had been pulled from frontier garrison duties and defense posts across the Empire. He would either crush this upstart species completely or die in the attempt. All ships maintain attack formation, Corex transmitted to his fleet commanders. The humans have demonstrated some form of advanced weapon technology, but they cannot possibly have enough firepower to engage our entire home fleet simultaneously. His confidence was shared by the thousands of Corthany warriors under his command. They had spent their entire lives conquering other species and had never encountered a civilization that could match their military superiority. The humans might have some clever new weapons, but raw numbers would eventually overwhelm any technological advantage. On Europa, Dr. Kate Wilson stood before control panels that no human had ever been designed to operate. The cascade generators were humanity's most closely guarded secret and their most terrifying creation. While the gravitational field weapons could tear apart matter in localized areas, the cascade systems could transmit those effects across interstellar distances through hyperspace itself. Dr. Wilson, all cascade units are showing ready status, reported her chief technician, Dr. Ross. Power levels are at maximum and targeting computers have locked onto the entire enemy fleet. Kate hesitated with her finger hovering over the activation switch. Once she pressed that button, there would be no going back. The cascade generators would unleash forces that could permanently scar the fabric of space and time itself. Future generations might curse her name for the damage she was about to inflict on the universe, but those future generations would only exist if humanity survived the next few hours. "All stations prepare for cascade activation," Kate announced. "We are about to demonstrate why threatening human children is the last mistake any species will ever make." The Corthony home fleet had covered half the distance to Earth when reality began unraveling around them. Unlike the localized gravitational fields that had destroyed Brutex's invasion force, the cascade weapons operated on a scale that defied comprehension. Entire regions of space began experiencing distortions that reached across multiple light years. Fleet Marshal Corex felt his flagship shudder as impossible readings flooded his sensor displays. The humans were not just manipulating gravity anymore. They had somehow learned to weaponize the fundamental forces that held the universe together and were broadcasting those effects through dimensions that Corthony science insisted could not exist. "Fleet Marshal, our ships are reporting massive system failures," his communications officer announced with terror evident in his voice. "The distortions are affecting our hyperspace, drives, navigation systems, and even our life support equipment." Corex watched in growing horror as his mighty armada began coming apart around him. Ships that had served the Empire faithfully for decades suddenly found their hulls dissolving as the strong nuclear force that held their atoms together was disrupted by weapons that attacked reality itself, the heavy battleship. Empire's Wrath was the first major vessel to succumb to humanity's fury. The massive ship had survived direct hits from planet-killer weapons during the conquest of the Hellion system, but it could not withstand forces that made the very concept of matter meaningless. The battleship simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing behind but a brief flicker of energy that quickly dissipated into the void. "Impossible," Corex whispered as he watched dozens of ships vanish every few seconds. "No species in the galaxy possesses technology this advanced. The humans cannot have developed these weapons in the brief span since we discovered their existence." His tactical officer looked up from displays showing readings that violated every law of physics the Corthony understood. "Fleet Marshal, our sensors are detecting temporal distortions around the human worlds. The energy signatures suggest they have been working on these weapons for far longer than we believed possible." The truth was even more disturbing than the aliens could imagine. Humanity had begun developing their ultimate weapons over 15 years ago when their deep space monitoring stations first detected signs of the expanding Corthony Empire. While other species waited to be conquered, humans had spent more than a decade preparing for this exact moment. On Earth, Admiral Thompson watched his tactical displays as alien ship after alien ship simply vanished from existence. The cascade generators were performing beyond their most optimistic projections, tearing through the Corthony fleet like a cosmic hurricane that left nothing but empty space in its wake. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the surviving enemy ships," reported Communications Officer Blake. "Multiple vessels are requesting immediate ceasefire and unconditional surrender." Thompson studied the tactical readout showing less than 300 Corthony ships remaining from the original force of over 2,000. The aliens were attempting to retreat, but the cascade effects were following them through hyperspace itself. There was nowhere in the galaxy they could run where humanity's wrath could not reach them. "Put me through to their fleet marshal," Thompson ordered. "It's time we finish this conversation." The communication screen showed a bridge filled with smoke and emergency lighting where Corex struggled to maintain command of his disintegrating fleet. The proud warrior who had conquered 17 star systems now faced the complete destruction of everything he had built over his 3-century career. "Human Admiral," Corex began in a voice that shook with defeat, "we surrender unconditionally. Order your weapons to cease fire, and we will withdraw from your territory immediately." Thompson leaned forward in his command chair with that same cold smile he had worn since this conflict began. Behind him, the cascade generators continued their deadly work as more alien ships dissolved into component particles that would never threaten anyone again. Fleet Marshal, let me explain something about human nature, Thompson said. When someone enters our home and threatens to murder our families, surrender is no longer an option? You came here expecting to commit genocide against 12 billion innocent people. Now you're going to learn what real extinction looks like. More Korthani ships vanished as the cascade effects reached critical intensity throughout the entire engagement zone. The remaining vessels found themselves trapped in expanding pockets of distorted spacetime where the laws of physics had been rewritten according to human specifications. Fleet Marshal, your empire made one critical miscalculation, Thompson continued. You assumed we were like the other species you had conquered, civilizations that would negotiate or surrender when faced with overwhelming force. But humans have a different approach to existential threats. Corex watched helplessly as his communications array began failing under the assault of forces his technology could not comprehend. What do you want from us? He managed to transmit before his ships. Systems started shutting down one by one. We want to ensure this never happens again, Thompson replied. Your empire will serve as an example to every other species in the galaxy. When they detect the expansion of human civilization, they will remember what happened to the Korthani and choose a different path. The cascade generators had been designed with one primary objective beyond defending Earth. They could transmit their effects through hyperspace to target anything within 1,000 light-year radius. Dr. Kate Wilson activated the final phase of humanity's ultimate weapon as readings confirmed the location of every Korthani world and military installation. Beginning interstellar cascade deployment, Kate announced to her team. All Korthani territories are now designated as primary targets. Across the galaxy, the Korthani Empire began experiencing humanity's judgment. Their homeworld felt the first effects as gravitational anomalies appeared in orbit around their capital planet. The massive space stations that had coordinated their military expansion for 3 centuries simply ceased to exist as the fundamental forces holding them together were disrupted by weapons fired from another star system. Governor Nexel was reviewing colonial expansion reports when his aides burst into his office with news that their entire orbital defense network had vanished without explanation. Similar reports flooded in from across the Empire as humanity's cascade weapons reached every world the Korthani had ever touched. Send emergency communications to all military outposts, Nexel ordered. Find out what happened to Fleet Marshal Corex and his expedition to the human system. The response came in the form of a transmission that had been automatically broadcast to every Korthani facility when the cascade effects began. Admiral Thompson's voice carried across interstellar space with a message that would haunt the survivors for generations to come. Citizens of the Korthani Empire, Thompson's recorded message began. Your leaders made the mistake of threatening humanity with extinction. We have responded by demonstrating what real annihilation looks like. Your military forces have been eliminated and your ability to threaten other species has been permanently removed. The transmission continued as gravitational distortions spread throughout Korthani space. Any survivors are advised to abandon your current territories and scatter to the far reaches of the galaxy. Humanity will monitor this region for the next 1,000 years. If we detect any attempt to rebuild your military capabilities or threaten other civilizations, we will finish what your war chief started. Governor Nexel stared at his communication displays showing the complete collapse of everything his species had built over the past 3 centuries. The Korthani Empire that had once controlled dozens of star systems no longer existed. In its place was empty space patrolled by weapons that could reach across the galaxy to destroy anything that displeased their human creators. Back in the human solar system, the last Korthani ships finally succumbed to forces beyond their comprehension. Fleet Marshal Corex transmitted one final message before his flagship joined the rest of his armada in oblivion. All vessels, all colonies, all outposts. Corex's voice carried across space with the weight of absolute defeat. The humans are not like the others. They have become something beyond war itself. Evacuate everything. Scatter to the distant galaxies. Never return to this region of space and never again threaten a species capable of unmaking reality itself. The transmission ended as the Empire's fist dissolved into its component atoms, leaving Admiral Thompson alone with the silence of victory. The tactical displays showed empty space where moments before 2,000 alien warships had threatened humanity's existence. Dr. Kate Wilson powered down the cascade generators while her teams began the process of documenting what they had accomplished. The gravitational weapons had exceeded every projection and eliminated not just the immediate threat, but the entire civilization that had created it. Dr. Wilson, what's our assessment of collateral damage? Thompson asked during their post-battle conference. Kate consulted reports from monitoring stations throughout human space before responding. The cascade effects have dissipated without causing permanent damage to normal spacetime. However, our long-range sensors are detecting gravitational echoes from the Corthony territories. The Empire appears to have been completely eliminated. Thompson nodded with satisfaction. What about other species in the region? Our communications division is receiving dozens of transmissions from nearby civilizations, Kate replied. They all detected the gravitational disturbances and are requesting information about what happened. Word is spreading rapidly throughout this entire sector of the galaxy. Within months, the story of humanity's victory over the Corthony Empire had reached every spacefaring civilization within 1,000 light years. The details varied depending on who was telling the tale, but the core message remained consistent. A young species from an unremarkable star system had faced extinction and responded by developing weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics themselves. Trade delegations and diplomatic missions began arriving at Earth within the year. Species that had never shown interest in human civilization suddenly wanted to establish friendly relations with the people who had eliminated the galaxy's most aggressive military power in a matter of hours. Admiral Thompson found himself hosting ambassadors from dozens of worlds as humanity took its place among the galactic community. The conversations always followed the same pattern, with alien diplomats asking polite questions about human culture, while carefully avoiding any mention of their military capabilities. Ambassador, your people seem to have developed remarkably advanced defensive systems, commented the Altarian trade representative during one such meeting. Thompson smiled that same cold smile he had worn during his confrontations with the Corthony. We prefer to think of them as insurance policies, Ambassador. Humanity learned long ago that the best way to ensure peace is to make war too expensive for potential aggressors. The truth was simpler and more terrifying than the aliens could imagine. Humanity had gazed into the abyss of potential extinction and emerged with weapons that could unmake entire civilizations. They had sought only to protect their children, but in doing so had become the thing that nightmares whispered about in the darkness between stars. The Corthony had come for war expecting to find helpless prey. Instead, they discovered that humans had spent 15 years preparing something far beyond mere warfare. They had built Annihilation itself and aimed it at anyone foolish enough to threaten their families. The galaxy would remember that lesson for millennia to come.